Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to our live webinar that we are hosting together with Exasol today. I'm your host, Rusmir Čulić from the Sales and Marketing Department here at CRMT, and we are really happy to have everybody joining today. Before we begin, allow me to introduce our guest speakers, Christian Langmayr and Carsten Weidmann from Exasol. So today we ask ourselves why 100% of customers recommend Exasol, and we hope to give you more than one answer. You know, Exasol has been in many ways redefining the meaning of a database in the last years, especially because of its famous performance speed. It's been a big year for Exasol, from being listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange to releasing the version 7.0, which we will talk about today, and also achieving incredible results in the data management survey conducted by BARC, where Exasol basically swept off the competition. Before I give the word to our guests, allow me to introduce our company, CRMT, a little bit. So who are we and what do we do? You might have heard about CRMT before. So we are a consulting company incorporated in 2005 and specializing in 4 areas. So we have data management solutions, regulatory reporting, corporate performance management, and as of 2019, also robotic process automation. We have more than 80 customers from Europe and Americas and more than 200 successfully finished projects. Let's just see the agenda for today. So as mentioned before, our guest, Christian Langmayr, is going to have a presentation about solving data problems that companies face today, following with Carsten with his presentation on the newest version of Exasol 7.0. And then after their presentations, we'll have a live Q&A session. So without further ado, I would now like to invite Christian to kick this event with your presentation, please.
Then let's see if that works. Can everybody see my presentation now?
Yes, I can confirm that. I see it.
And this is already the first point where I hate presenting virtual in comparison to presenting in a room, because you can't just turn around and see if the presentation is out there. So maybe start off with a little bit about Exasol. I know that most of you have heard of us, but some of them might be out there who have not heard of us or have not heard enough of us. Exasol is, I always call it, a very aged startup. As you got just heard, is that we joined the Frankfurt Stock Exchange only earlier this year, but Exasol is actually around for roughly 20 plus years. It started out, as these things do, from a university project where somebody thought it might be a good idea to have a faster, or let's call it the very fastest database out there for analytical reasons. Currently, it's about 600 installations. So we have customers who use it for multiple installations, span across 5 continents. So South, North America, Asia, Europe. Now we got even 6. We just signed the first customer in South Africa. So it should now be 6 continents. 200 plus customers across all over the world. Offices in Germany, UK, France, and Northern America, with, as you would expect, the biggest growth currently in North America. Just to rush you through the 20 years of experience, it's founded in 2000, as I said, out of a university project. Then the first real project was to build a database for a local customer who was using Oracle intensively. And we, at that time, been so fast that loading the data into Exasol, doing the calculations, putting it back in Exasol was faster than actually doing the calculations in Oracle. Then the first real public offers to a broader sense of customers, that is also the time about when we won Adidas as a customer, starting to work with a couple of larger accounts like Zalando and a variety of customers. Opened the office in the US around 2014, just with a sales office. Since we have gone public now, we are just building a development team over there as well, and an extensive sales organization. It's about time to get into the market for real and fuel it properly. Exasol UK was founded in 2017. At the same time, we launched our cloud offerings on AWS and Azure. Since then, we are also launched on Google. So you can choose either to stay on premise, to go into the cloud, or combine it where you need it. Opened the office in France in 2018, won the first couple of customers over there, and now hiring people also across for the other European countries. And then the biggest goal that we achieved was earlier this year to go public in June, and that gave us also the possibility to become a sponsor of the DFB. And in this case, there was a contest who should replace the remaining analytical database, and we won out against competition like SAP and Oracle. So personally, and you're going to see quite soon why I like it, I would have preferred not to sponsor football, but maybe to sponsor cycling, because I think football, everybody can do football. Not everybody can do cycling, as the Slovenians in the room, I think, know very, very dearly that is the more interesting sport at the moment. You asked me about the BARC survey. The BARC survey, I know Carsten Bange for nearly 15 years now, and they always stood out in the market as analysts, as they are looking not only to marketing presentation, but with the setup of their company, they're also deeply involved in customer projects. And when we had them in my previous job with MicroStrategy, when we had them over for analyst briefings, they astound our product team with their deep knowledge and the feedback they gave us. So when we've been included in the BARC survey this year, we decided to take part in two categories. The one was data warehouse technologies. The other one is our core product, which is like the core idea of Exasol data analytical databases. When BARC came back with the results, we've been quite pleased and astounded. We made it in 18 top ranks. There is 24 categories in there, and 4 times we've been in the leaders groups, which means you are way above the median. What we really liked is that everybody, and that's every single person that got asked by BARC, would recommend Exasol over his competitors. So as soon as you have started with an Exasol implementation, you like how we support people, and that's also you can see in the support rating 9.9 out of 10. If you compare us to the competition, that's sometimes a really big gap in that. But it says a lot about Exasol is that when we received the 9.9 out of 10 for support, the question was not how can we open a bottle of champagne to celebrate this. Everybody in the company asked, why didn't we get a 10? What was wrong with the missing 0.1? So now we're looking into how to improve that and how to get better, and keep, or when we grow, keep the level that we have. If you want to download this, and we're going to share the presentation, there is a bit.ly link so you can download the actual BARC survey. I call these always hooray slides. It just means that you see Exasol is not in any particular industry. Exasol is not limited to any size of company. The smallest customer that I know of is a Turkish retailer who has like 40 shops and does analytics for those 40 shops. The largest ones is like Finanzinformatik or Badu, who run massive analytics on a variety of use cases, or Adidas, who's doing customer predictions and product predictions based on Exasol. So it doesn't matter what size you have, what your case is. It only matters that you have the analytical need to solve something, and that you see or find out internally that solving analytical questions quicker will help you in the journey for better success with your customers. What I said, like a lot of things have changed, and part of my presentation will also be talking about what happened in COVID-19. Is like, if you look at this picture, last year I included it into my presentations because I liked the colors and the lights and everything. And since March, I think like maybe I would not go there. It's too close, too many people, no masks, and it changes how you interact with people. To illustrate for myself and to think about it, I thought like, how did this year change you? And I give you my personal itinerary for earlier this year. I had user groups in Cologne. I went for hackathons in Nuremberg. We started our platform. I went out for a user group and partner day in London, another user group up in Hamburg. We presented in Zagreb. I went skiing. I went to a microstrategy symposium in the Netherlands. And then from Tuesday that week to Thursday that week, where we were planned to have a user group in Vienna, calendar week 12 to calendar week 46, home office. Nothing changed. No more travel, no more nothing. And I think that's the same for everybody out there. But also, like everybody, I used the time quite nicely. Last year, I was able to do 4,500 kilometers on the bike, and this year already have covered something like 6,500 kilometers. So for everybody, the world changed from running to an office every day to run to be at a home office, and a perspective on life changed interestingly for everybody. But if you look deeper and without the jokes, what does this crisis mean for customers? What does it mean for the IT departments? And what have we seen happening with our customers? The first one is you got told you have to be in home office. Nobody is going to go to the office anymore. So like when you go with a boat into a storm, the first thing that you say is like, can we survive this? What do we have to make sure that everything that we have working is keep on working? What do we have, and will that take us to the other side without risks? How can I work with the new reality? How do I get everybody into the home office? How do I get everybody a laptop? How do I get them hooked up with VPN? How do I get work if somebody of the team gets COVID and will not be available? And then the next thing is, where are my gaps? What does it take to provide the information that we need to survive this to everybody? And we did a survey a couple of weeks ago, and the result was 54% of our global audience have democratized the data before COVID-19, but a third has started to think about it. How can we get more people access to data and quicker since they started COVID? And 12%, and I think that's dying dinosaurs, has like, no, we're not going to give data to everybody. But in the same survey, we also found out that 22% of the customers, or 22% of the recipients respondents said, like, the biggest barriers in the organization is that they have old infrastructure and they're not able to provide the data, not able to provide the data in an accurate measure. So count into, let's say, March, April, June, everybody has sorted out what's going to happen with the with COVID and how you're going to react with your infrastructure on it. So like realignment. So now we have weathered the system, we have tied everything down on the boat. Let's go into the storm and see what do we have to do to be prepared if it gets worse or if it gets better, and how can we profit out of that. So analyzing what is actually missing in the IT system to make us successful. And then use the gaps, how to close them quickly as possible, starting small projects to get faster analytics. And then if, like we now see, a second wave is coming, what do we have to do to keep the impact of that on the company as little as possible? And then, and that's the big question is, who is out there who can help us with our problems and doesn't treat us like yet another customer that we're going to send a license out of compliance invoice, but keeps us treats us as a customer, treats us as part of the family. And that's where I think, like, where the BARC results come in quite nicely. I don't know if you can see the results on the screen, but you're going to find them in the BARC survey. Is like platform reliability. Whereas somebody from MicroStrategy Consulting once said to me, I've got an Exasol in the system and it's the only thing that I don't worry about. It just works. It does the job, and it does the job quite nicely. And we see we reached a 10.0 in there. And then support quality. And since a year, I guess, we also have a local support partner with CRMT who helps us to do the support in local language. And I think that's the other thing. You can throw questions at us, and we still give you access to the developers, and we try to turn around as quick as possible. I talked to a banking customer in Austria who said to me, or said to us, is like, when we have an error on Exasol, I just send you a message and I know you're going to solve it. In our previous database technology, I started to gather the logs, I started to gather all the cases just to make sure that we get beyond the first initial level. By the time I have my case formulated in the previous document, in the previous technology, I already have the first answer from your support. And then the second thing is, if you want to change things quickly, and Carsten's going to talk about the change as an example later, the time to market. How quickly can you realize significant gains, significant advantages? And as an anecdote on that one, we went into a large customer, gave them our trial cluster. They switched it on, they smiled, they never gave back the test hardware because they just implemented it, the first improvements in a morning. So when you have defined what you're going to do and defined where your gaps are and defined where you want to go, then usually the third phase starts, and that's what everybody is hoping to happen in spring when there might be a vaccine. Is like, what do we have to do as a company? What have we learned in this crisis? And what does our internal customers need to get more successful? How can we provide them with better analytics? How can we provide them with better data? And how can we use that to change the business in a way that we become future-proof? And one of the key points that we've seen is, and it's boring because it's been there for all the time, it's performance. You need to have fast responses from the database, cost reliant from the database to get it out there. And in the same survey that I shown before, nearly 80% say the current infrastructure doesn't make it, doesn't enable them to democratize their data. But at the same time, 74% of decision makers think that they have all the data given out to the business. And that shows me what I truly believe in the past 15 years. Business rarely knows the pains of the IT department. And on the other side, there is a communication gap between what business wants and IT can deliver, and they have to sit on the same table to make it happen. Otherwise, the local departments will run off and do their own little things, and that usually scrutinizes data quality and everything. What we also see is that more and more customers want to have faster data. Maybe not real time, because real time always depends on a lot of distinction and qualities, but going away from monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, daily reports, we now see that we need update cycles in the minutes. And that's also coming down to performance. Exasol is a massive parallel, and that allows you not only to run queries very fast, but also loading data very fast. We had one customer who had an ETL job that ran for 26 hours, which is not the best thing if you have daily load. And we were able to cut it down with Exasol to, I think it was in between half an hour and an hour. That's just one example. But that allowed him then to cut up their own loading cycles to, let's say, hourly, and then it's a couple of minutes loading, and then you can start to build completely new cases internally. And lastly, there is a game out there to use AI and machine learning, but taking the data out of the database, put it into another system, and getting it back into the user front end is nice. Especially if you talk about a combination in the cloud and other tools, it might be costly to take the data out. So we came up with the idea that you should be unifying AI and BI. Exasol allows you to run Python, R, and a couple of other languages directly in the database. So when your data scientists have developed a new algorithm, predicting fraud, predicting user behavior, predicting machine failures and whatever, you can then deploy this algorithm directly into the database and run it locally without avoiding that you have to move the data around. Summing it up and looking at the time, in a nutshell, my advice would be check your infrastructure and check also your vendor relationship. We want you, as Exasol, we want you to be part of the family, and we want you to be successful, and that's the core of our belief. Check us out on the technical stuff. Flexibility. Sometimes large companies try to lock you into their technology, which is good because you can negotiate a better contract for all, but at the same time, later on, it's going to be a more costly, because if you ever want to change, you're not able to change it. So never let you lock into a dedicated cloud, or sometimes you want to go from cloud back to on-premise. Check if it's possible to do that. Ease and use, Exasol has built around the idea that your software should be easy to use. Just deploy it, forget it, and smile when you run your reports. Make sure that it supports you and that you support it. And the last one is think ahead. Start to look into tools that will allow you to be on the forefront of what you do. Not today, not next year, but in a couple of years. And integration of AI, machine learning is one that will help you a long way. And pricing models, if you pay per query, you're gonna pay per query. So maybe the idea of having something that pays you in a different model might be interesting. And a lot of boring talk from my side. I think it's about time to hand over to my colleague, Carsten, and who's in for the real part. He can tell you about all the stuff that I can't tell you. Carsten?
Yes. So let me just quickly find the button to share my screen.
If there's any questions in there, I'm happy to answer them already now, or otherwise we do them in the end.
Good. Yeah. So thank you, Christian, for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is Carsten Weidmann. I'm Technical Alliance Manager here for Exasol, and I quickly will take you actually what is new in Exasol. But just before that, also give a very brief introduction. Christian already took some parts of that away from me, but nevertheless give you a brief introduction into what Exasol actually is. So Exasol is an analytics database built for analytics, and basically has these three main USPs. That is the performance. Christian already talked about that. Ease of use. We want to make sure that you can just use this database and basically forget about it. Christian mentioned the MicroStrategy consultant who said it just works. That's our goal. Have that database just work. And last but not least, the choice, which also was on Christian's slide, is basically we don't want to have you to have a vendor lock-in when you choose Exasol, but actually you can run it anywhere you like with a very flexible predictive pricing. And the machine learning part, actually, this is also something that I will touch in this presentation a bit later, because that is also something, or some features for that were also added in version 7. As it's a relational database management system built for analytics, architectural-wise, we're basically incorporated different techniques in order to make it fast, in order to make it scalable and provide a high concurrency, which is that we decided to run it in a cluster. Christian mentioned we started 20 years ago. Actually, our founders came from research in massive parallel processing. So they were looking at how can we leverage a cluster and how can we develop algorithms to leverage a cluster of servers to solve problems quicker and faster. And that's basically that knowledge is what we took and put into our database, and then added other techniques like in-memory, like column store, things that just make sense in the analytics space and make sure that our database runs as fast. We have this multiple platform support running on premises or in any cloud, be it one of the public cloud providers. You can find Exasol on the marketplace of AWS, Azure, or Google, but also we have customers using private clouds, also a big topic still. I think many don't really see that, but more customers are running actually in private clouds than in public clouds, but nevertheless. And with that, we, as data loading, Christian mentioned that also, is one big part actually in analytics, right? It's you need the data in the place where you want to analyze it in order to be able to analyze it. So that's why the product also ships powerful data integration capabilities. Not in the sense of that we have an ETL tool available, no, but we have basically the engine to run the ETL or ELT job directly in the database in a very performant way to directly connect to any kind of source systems, be it databases, be it files, be it web services or whatever, and integrate that data quickly. And if data integration is not the way to go, but you want to rather set up something like the logical data warehouse that Langmayr invented in 2009, then we also have the necessary data virtualization capabilities on board, which allow you to do exactly that. Access external data live without having to store it in the database, but access it live within a query, for example. The data science part, that's something that we discovered several years ago, that actually it doesn't make sense to have a data science environment and a BI environment, because I mean, we try to have both teams work on the same data. So whatever the data science team develops in terms of models, in terms of algorithms, etc., can directly be applied by the BI team on their data as well. So why not move them onto the same platform and allow them to work together on the same data on the same platform? Also, given the data science team the capability to actually automatically use a full cluster for the full performance of the system. So that's why we integrate those data science languages, one of them being Python. And I'll get on to that in a second as well. And last but not least, it's an enterprise-grade product with the self-tuning technologies. That means the ease of use that I mentioned, that's very important for us and has been from the beginning as such. Good. So that's it, first of all, about Exasol in general, but so the new features in version 7. I split that up a little bit. So the first 3 ones I'll quickly cover in slides, and then the last 2, we're going to look at it live in the database and what they do and what they are and how it works. First of all, we added consumer groups to the database. As the database tries to leverage all available resources for every query that's running, you might have the situation that you actually, when you have high concurrency on your system, give certain users more resources and others maybe a little bit less. Maybe there are jobs that they should just run. It doesn't matter when they finish. Maybe there are users like the CFO, when he runs his reports, he should get them at the fastest possible speed. And that's why we introduced first in priority groups, but now we call them consumer groups, as they allow the distribution of resources among users, among user groups. Initially, primarily that's the CPU. So how much CPU can a query use? And in terms of CPU, we not just use one core. Actually, a query that runs will even use on a single server as many cores as available. So 20, 30 cores can easily be consumed by a query. And with the CPU weight, we can limit that so that certain users get more CPU, others less. And as queries usually generate temporary data, we can also limit that so that users don't fill up the system or create a lot of temporary data, which might then lead to slowdowns of other queries. So that's basically the consumer group idea behind it. And of course, many more things can be added, and that is in the work in this. The second part, and that's now the data science part, and I think that the most exciting part, or one of the most exciting parts here, is that we support GPUs in our user-defined functions. As you know, in AI and ML, especially in the learning, but also in the predicting, these GPUs perform a lot better than regular CPUs. And so data scientists have started using these GPUs quite intensively. And especially now with the cloud, you can very easily configure systems and get systems up and running that actually have not only just one GPU inside, but multiple. Companies would probably never buy a cluster of servers with a lot of number of GPUs, as these wouldn't be used 24/7, but rather on specific times. So that's where the cloud is ideal for, because you have the flexibility. Whenever you need a system with GPUs, for example, you just fire it up and use it. And when you're done, just shut it down. And that's also the same thing that is available for Exasol in this case, where we can use the GPUs for data science. And what it looks like is actually, very briefly, it's just some code. I hope it doesn't scare you away. In this case, we basically create a function that is to predict something in using the TensorFlow framework, which is a very public framework when it comes to AI and ML, and basically allowing us to specify which GPUs, if we have multiple GPUs, to actually use for this, and then run some predictions and emit that prediction. So this is the code for the function, and I just included it so that you can later also take a look at it. Actually, the interesting part is how do we use it? How do we leverage it? So if we imagine we had a cluster of servers running Exasol with the TensorFlow framework and with several, in this case, NVIDIA GPUs in this cluster on each server, we could then just run a simple select query where we use this prediction function that we just created. And actually with that query, these nodes will in parallel, and also using these GPUs in parallel, run these predictions very fast directly on the data that we have stored in the database. That means both teams, and you can integrate that basically then in a dashboard where you have basically live predictions in the dashboard for your CFO, for whoever in management needs access to that. This is something, I guess, that's unique in the database market. One more thing that we added just for in the slide is an optimizer. We of course constantly work on to make the Exasol faster, and one central aspect of that is the optimizer that takes the query and optimizes the execution plans. We have now included a new version as a preview, so you can easily switch between the default one and the experimental one that we call it, so that you can also see where are we going to, how is it working, and that we also invite our customers to and partners to actively provide feedback on this this function, so that we can then make it even better in the future. Good, and now to basically the two main things that I wanted to show you in version 7. That's the hash data type and the JSON functions. For that, I'm going to switch over to DB Visualizer. I have a database version 7 running here on my laptop, and to start with the hash data type, you might wonder why a new hash data type, and when is it useful to be used? So what we've come across in the past or recent years is that many customers are shifting their data models towards Data Vault. Some of you might have heard of that. And in Data Vault, when you're using Data Vault, you create surrogate keys based on hashes. Typically, you store them in a character field. And in this case, as you can see, this is my little data model that I created. This is I know it's very small. The reading is not very big. But if we look in here, we have satellites, we have hubs, and links, basically. So everything that you might know from Data Vault. And the keys that we use here are character 32 keys. So that's basically what we start with. And just to give you an idea of what can be done, or just to show what actually the hash data type means, I prepared some queries. This data model that I showed you is a data model that is based on the TPCH data model, which is a benchmark in the analytics database world. And as these tables that I showed you don't represent the actual TPCH data tables, I created a set of views that can be seen here, which then access the data stored in these different tables with quite some joins in there, etc. So what will happen when we access data that's stored in Data Vault is loads of joins. So just to give you an idea of what changes with the hash type, I'll just quickly let these two queries here run. And just to give you an idea. Now, don't expect any performance miracles from the setup that we have here. It's my laptop running this database in a virtual machine, and right now competing against Zoom. I've also seen that PowerPoint takes some stuff from it. But nevertheless, so we have these two queries running. One ran in 7 seconds, one ran in 8 seconds. Now, what I want to do is I now want to change this data type to hash type. And for that, initially, what I have to do is just remove my foreign keys, because when I change the data type of a primary key or a foreign key that is referenced, this does not work. So let me just very quickly, I was lazy, quickly change these, auto commit is on. So we removed these, and now we just alter the data, the tables, and apply the hash type data type. So let me just quickly run that. And now it just goes through the tables and replaces the character 32 data type with a hash type. A hash type is a binary data type. As you know, the hashes are basically a representation of hexadecimal strings. So it's in this case is 128-bit, which means character 32, which means 16 bytes long. Character 32 because every byte is represented with 2 characters in a character field. So it just changes the data types, shouldn't be too long to go. And after this is done, we'll run these queries again, just to see what impact on performance this actually has. Okay, it is done, very good. So let me just, I actually let it run twice, and I've set the query cache off, so it actually runs twice, just because in the first run, what will happen is that most likely some indexes will be created, as Exasol does this automatically. This is one of the nice features. However, we can already see we're down to 5 seconds from 7 and 8 before. So if we let it run again, we're now down at 3 and probably again 5. I guess the second query didn't need to create any indexes. So from a total runtime of about 15 seconds, we're now down to a total runtime of close to 8 seconds, which means we almost doubled the speed just by changing the data type. And that's one of the main issues or main things that this hash data type tries to achieve or is set to achieve. Our dev team, of course, already also did a lot of performance testing, and that's the same numbers that they were getting as soon as the hash type compares basically to a decimal data type. And when it comes to performance, needs less space, better compression, less I/O, so additional benefits apart from the performance benefit. That is one thing. So that's the hash data type. The second thing I wanted to show you is the JSON functions that we have included. Now, in order to get some JSON, because usually I don't have JSON just lying around, I decided to create a little function using a weather service, and just to get some weather, because that weather service returns, and that's another example of what you can do with our user-defined function framework. Just connect to an external source, in this case with a city, and then just get the weather prediction as a JSON. So when we execute that, and I just picked the city of Ljubljana here, so Slavko can confirm whether this weather service gets the right stuff. So Slavko, it should be about 6 degrees right now, 100% cloud cover, and we can just copy that. So take a look at what we have here as JSON, which is a pretty long one. As you can see, this document is 1,200, more than 1,200 records long. So this is basically the current weather in Ljubljana, rather cold, loads of cloud, but no rain. Good. So this is data that we get. And if we want to access that in a database, we usually are used to work with tables. So what we did is we implemented 2 functions. That's the JSON extract and the JSON value. JSON value allows you to access individual values. With JSON extract, we basically are going to extract several values from this JSON function in the current one that we have here. From current condition, I just want to get the temperature and the precipitation. So when I look at the query, this is the path. I just specify the path to these 2 values. And then I specify what data type I want to have that in. Because as you know, JSON per se is just character, but maybe as a temperature, I would like to have that as an int, and the precipitation, in this case, use a double. And to get some more data, I just created a little table with cities. These are cities from Europe, so we can look at the weather that's currently in Europe. So this is what it looks like. Rome is pretty nice, I would say, with 19 degrees. Ljubljana and Berlin have the same weather, so we share the same weather, and Nuremberg is not far off from that either. So that's basically how we can access data in there. The second thing is that we also have in this JSON is that we have basically hourly data. We have weather and we have array, and then in that array we have dates, and then in that date we have another nested array, which is data we also want to get, right? And maybe not just one single one, but multiple ones. So what we can do is basically by adding a hash to the path, we can indicate we want to use the array and then get the date. And then from the nested array, we want to get the time, again, temperature and precipitation. So if I let this run, and every time, just imagine my computer connects to the weather service outside, and then fetches that data. So in Ljubljana, just to give you an indication, today, well, it's not getting much warmer. Tomorrow looks a little bit better and dry. Same for Friday and so on, and for the other cities as well. So this is how we can access data and directly work with it. This is within a SQL statement. Of course, I could have picked any other JSON data, be it stuff that I get from a document database, for example, be it stuff that I get from somewhere else or I have stored in my database, so I can directly work with it. I just need to make sure, I mean, we can even emit a date type. That means I can directly work with that data. It's not just character, it's exactly what I need, and then continue to work with that. And of course, in addition to that, and to sum it up, basically, we not only have these functions to access data, but of course, we have also functions to verify the data, to basically get, is it a JSON or is it not a JSON? Does it have unique keys and so on? So if I let this run, and I hope I just have to get to the right schema, sorry for that. If I let this run, we can then check, we have different values in here. And if we look at them, we have the functions that are available. So that indicate us, for example, do we have an array? In this case, we have an array. Is it a value? This is not a value. This is an object. No, it's not an object. Actually, it's not JSON because the square brackets and the quotes are missing here. So here we have the correct object, but here not because something is missing. So this is basically, last but not least, the stuff that allows you to actually actively work with JSON and directly accessing it. That means before that, we could already implement user-defined functions. I mean, of course, you can imagine if we take the JSON that we get here with Python, you can, of course, also extract information from JSON. But with the built-in functions, you get a lot more flexibility because with the queries, within the queries, you can individually define what actually do you want to get out of this JSON and how do you want to work with that. Good. That's it so far for the JSON functions. In case you want to take a look at it as well, get it now, test it now. There are multiple options there. One is the community edition, that's just what I've been running right now, which is what I've been using. And the community edition already allows you to store up to 200 gigabytes of data. So it can become quite interesting with that. It allows you everything to do with it. So whatever I've shown you here, you can replicate there, test it, get your hands on it, and enjoy working with Exasol and the capabilities it provides. That's it from my side. Thank you very much. And in case, and I guess Rosemir has collected some questions. I saw some Q&A pop up. So please fire away.
Yeah, let me just switch to the Q&A. Thank you so much, Carsten. Thank you so much, Christian, for your presentations. All right, I for one have to say that this was quite insightful, and I also believe that the main question was answered in more than one way. So why do people recommend Exasol? Basically, we've heard that through resilience, right, developing a robust immediate response to the crisis today, realigning to the severe economic pressures, and then also leading to recovery, meaning we try to embrace digital technologies and data analytics to assist future growth. Now, yes, as mentioned, we do have some questions from you also. I would also like to say, while we still have the time, do not hesitate. Please ask us any questions, and if not now, we will try to answer them later via email. So let's check the questions. The first one is, can GPUs be used on local premises or only on cloud? This is from Borut Rojac. Carsten, is this maybe a type of question you can answer?
Sure. Of course, you can also use them on premises. It's just, I mentioned the cloud because most of the companies will probably use them in the cloud because it's just the flexibility. You configure your server with a certain number of GPUs, and once you don't need them anymore, you just discard them, and you don't have to pay them for them anymore. I have not seen that many servers with GPUs in data centers on premises, but of course that works as well. So if you have a server available or a machine available with a nice GPU in there, or multiple GPUs, or even a cluster, of course you can use them as well.
It might also be cheaper to use the GPUs to generate Bitcoins at the moment and then just wait for the query.
All right.
Yeah.
So basically, I don't know if this question, there's a follow-up question actually from Borut. So let's maybe just check this one first. He says, have you tested GPUs on geodata?
GPUs on geodata? Not specifically, no. No, I mean, we've tested it so when you do data science using GPUs, you prepare your data in certain ways. We haven't actually, not to my knowledge, put it this way, used geodata. It could well be that customers did so already. So I don't see any limitations in that. Of course, you try to prepare the data because you have different aspects when you train a model. You have different attributes, and you have to normalize them and bring them into a format that allows you then easily to deal with that. And the geodata depends on what exactly is necessary from that. Is it just the distances? Is it the specific location? But of course, that could also be used in that. I don't see that any issues with that.
All right.
I also posted the GitHub repository of Thorsten Kilias, who is one of our developers for the data science part.
Yeah.
So there is tutorials on how to work with it and how to train it. And as Carsten mentioned, and as I mentioned before, is like we have a quite open platform. So you're invited to join us, and also join us on the community at community.exasol.com. Throw in your questions and let's develop what you need as we go along. And
Yes.
we need that feedback and the input, because if you say it would be very, very helpful to say, let's say, to solve the traveling salesman problem with Exasol, then there should be a way to do it.
Yeah, this is excellent. Thank you so much for your answers and also for your questions. I don't know if everybody can see these. There's two types of questions and answers. There is one that says answered. So this is where Christian has sent us this link to the GitHub. Well, all right. So please, if you have any more questions, there's the email addresses from Slavko and from me. You can send us an email anytime and we will try to answer your questions as soon as possible. Maybe just last thing, allow me to invite everyone to fill out the survey that we prepared for you. I believe Vesna copied the link in the chat also. And we will send you this survey also via email. So feel free to fill it out and give us some precious feedback. I would also like to invite everyone to join our Exasol user group in Slovenia that we launched. This is basically a place where you can exchange best practices about Exasol and analytic databases. You can invite your colleagues and anyone who would like to broaden their knowledge about databases. Also, you can find this link in the chat as well. but we will be sending it to you via email along with the recording of today's webinar. So yeah, if there's nothing else from maybe no questions, I would like to thank everybody again. Also, Christian and Carsten, thank you so much for your presentations today. This was really, really good and really insightful. And I hope to see you guys soon at our next event.
Yes, and hopefully in person.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Speak to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Bye.
Have a great day. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Yeah.